welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Connie Nightingale is a former bodybuilding competitor, certified personal trainer, and nutrition coach, all while being a mother of two and running a business and a farm. She owns her own training company, Connie Nightingale Fitness, which evolved from her own journey towards a healthier lifestyle. She tailors custom and individualized programs for her clients' unique goals and desired outcomes. Connie targets the mental, physical, emotional, and nutritional elements of healthy living. Her goal is to teach each client how to empower themselves to achieve success by cracking their own health code. She hosts the Fit Farming Food Mom podcast, which has a bunch of great episodes with guests that some of which we've shared, and we are honored to welcome Connie to Boundless Body Radio. Connie, it's great to have you on.
Hey, thank you so much for that amazing introduction, by the way. That was excellent. I'm happy to be here.
Do you ever get sick of hearing other people introduce you? I never get sick of it. Like, can you read that like one more time? It sounds so super cool.
Yeah, I know. It doesn't sound as cool when I read it to myself. I don't know why.
Totally. Well, okay, so we are in the middle of this pandemic, hopefully on the other side of it. And during the pandemic, when a lot of people went in, they realized they were spending more time at home. And so they would get pets. Like a lot of people got COVID dogs. Some people got COVID cats. But we share something unique that you and I both got COVID basement gyms.
Totally, yes. It was kind of a funny way it came about. But yes, I have a very nice gym in my basement now.
That's amazing. Yeah, when this all started, we kind of like went outside and went to parks, and it was at least like springtime and summertime, and we were able to train our clients. And one thing that was really surprising is how much you can do with like a minimal amount of equipment. Like you don't need, a gym is way nice, but you don't need it. Like there's other ways around it. And we knew winter was coming, and we needed to kind of be inside. And so we built out our basement into a gym. It sounds like you guys did the same thing.
Yeah, totally. Well, and it was kind of interesting. When all this pandemic stuff started and everything started shutting down, obviously it was still springtime. I'm in North Idaho. The weather just sucks in the springtime. It's snowing one minute, sunny the next, and I had clients that were like, well, we know you have equipment at your house because we know you work out at your house sometime. Can we come over and just use it? And I'm like, I'm not sure how that works with my licenses, and all of that kind of stuff. And next thing you know, they were just bothering the heck out of me. And I was like, okay, well, listen, I have a bunch of old equipment in my basement, and my basement was not finished. We're talking, it had a flood, and I had to gut it and take the walls out, and the floors, I painted the concrete just so it wouldn't look quite so bad, but it was really bad. And one of my really faithful clients was like, well, listen, I'm going to show up even if you don't say I could come over. So she came over and started working out, and then her and a couple other people. So I would just be really mindful and clean everything really well afterwards. And next thing you know, I'm like, you know what? Why am I not utilizing this space? I'm an idiot. So I didn't really have anything else to do. I was catching up on home projects. And I, at the time, was still working my day job. I'm not anymore, but I was like, well, I'm out of work, so I'm going to remodel my basement. And that's basically where my own private personal training studio came about.
That's amazing. We have so much in common as far as that goes. Very similar to our story. That's great. I learned that story through your podcast, which is how I was able to find you. I was doing research on one of our shared guests, Michelle Hearn, who's amazing, author of The Dietitian's Dilemma. And you do a great show. It's funny, you've even been asked the same question that we have, like, how much do you make on your podcast, which I find just hilarious. Like, yeah, right. Do you know how much money I spend on this? Anyway,
yeah.
Your show is great. And one thing that I really love about it is you are willing to change your mind about things. I think you've even changed your introduction more than once. Where you kind of identify with a group and, maybe a particular diet, and then you learn and find a different way. And I've loved that and really respected that about you. I think that's an amazing quality, and I think it's something all of us should strive for. But today, I really wanted to bring you on to learn about your life, all the journey that you've gone through in this kind of like fitness space in this continuum, and just, this was this stage of my life and I learned this and I gave away this and this got better and this got worse. So I went to the next steps, and I think it would be helpful for the listener who might find themselves somewhere in the middle of that journey. You can kind of give them some guidance.
Absolutely. Yeah, the rabbit hole is pretty deep on this one.
Yes, totally fine. All of it's fair game.
It seems like I am not one of those people that has a straightforward story, but in a nutshell, about 6 years ago, my whole family changed our diet due to one of our family members needing some psychiatric help. And we had basically tried everything with the traditional Western medical system, and it failed us completely. And so finally, one day I was reading in this health and wellness magazine, and I saw this seminar, and it said, do you have a child with autism or ADHD or bipolar or any of these other disorders on the spectrum? Then come see our clinic or whatever it is. And so I was like, I'm going to go sit for this seminar that they're having on kids that have trouble. And so I went there and I listened. My husband went with me. And the whole time this lady was talking about how the brain works and the things that affect it and how much of a role the gut plays in it, we were like looking at each other going, holy crap, this is our kid. Like, this is what's going on.
Wow.
And so we did that seminar, and the lady came up to us afterwards and she's like, I could tell you guys had something really crazy going on at home because of the way that you looked when I would say stuff. It made complete sense to you. And I was like, oh yeah, it did. And she's like, well, I want to welcome you to come to my clinic. I have a lady that comes in once a month and does nutrition, and she has a great presentation. I think you would really enjoy it. So we went in there. My husband was unable to join me because we didn't have a sitter that night. So I went in by myself, and the whole time I'm listening to this seminar, which basically was on the GAPS diet, which is a really incredible diet. It's Dr. Campbell McBride actually came up with it. And it used to be called Gut and Psychology Syndrome, the name of the book, but they've since then changed it to Gut and Physiology Syndrome, which it covers everything because it covers autoimmune. It covers the relationship to the gut and autoimmune, and the gut to your mental health, and all these things. And this lady did this presentation. And the whole time she was talking my language completely. I had always kind of tried to attempt things on a more holistic level. But the whole time she was talking, I was not just thinking of my child that needed help. I was like, oh my gosh, I have that problem too. And my mind was kind of blown. And I came home and I told my husband, I was like, okay, we're done. We are changing our diet completely. We are eliminating everything. And I don't screw around when it comes to like trying things. I don't beat around the bush. I'm not like, oh, I'm going to start tomorrow. I literally grabbed a box that night. It's like 9:00 at night. And I started looking at the ingredients of stuff, and I had the PowerPoint presentation that she gave us. And I'm looking at the ingredients, and I was like, well, that's garbage. And so is that. And so is that. And so is that. And like, basically by the time I got done going through all my cabinets, I had thought that I was a relatively healthy cooker. I mean, I love to cook. I'm crazy about it. I have always cooked things at home, but from scratch really isn't from scratch if you start thinking about it in today's modern day terms.
Right.
You're not making your noodles. You're not making your pasta sauce. You might brown your ground beef and throw it in the pre-made red sauce in a can and then pour it over some pre-made noodles. And today that's home cooking for people. So anyway, emptied out our cabinets, and then per the GAPS guidelines, I can tell you, I don't think there was one thing left in my house afterwards. And so then my husband and I looked at each other, and he basically looked at me like I was batshit crazy, which I am.
What do we eat now?
Yeah. And that's kind of how it was too, because I highly recommend reading the book to anybody that's listening to this podcast. It is extremely interesting, and it is an amazing diet. And the way that everything is linked together with your gut is crazy. And so but the intro to it, like the foods you're eating are all like just bone broths and like super steamed, saturated, certain vegetables, not others. And like, it's very bland. And I remember the first time we cooked, I made some chicken and some like bone broth and some like vegetables. And we couldn't find a single seasoning that even fit and was allowed in the dang diet. And I remember that we're all kind of sitting at the table and we're like, oh, this is disgusting, like it had no flavor. But how much of that no flavor was because we were so used to these hyper palatable
That's right.
foods, right?
That's right. I was just going to ask
So
that. That's a really great point.
yeah, so like here we are sitting at the table, and I remember my husband looking at my son and my daughter and going, "Well, you better get used to this because this is how it is now." and and that was it. Like they never complained. I mean, they may not have been real eager to jump up to the kitchen table, but then I'm a very good cook. I started diving into all this literature and like getting online and just digging through recipes and finding good things to eat. And it didn't take long before we were eating really good food that was extremely healthy also. So we went through that protocol for 16 months, and within a
Wow.
couple of weeks we noticed insane differences, not just in our kids but ourselves too. And that's when our minds were really opened to how bad we were eating in the past.
Mm. I just don't think a lot of people make those connections, or maybe they do the way I did it, where it's like kicking and screaming. Like nutrition can't help your skin. Like nutrition doesn't change your brain. Like it's not apparently obvious, but it sounds like you just jumped in and it made a lot of sense like right away.
Well, and it did. And then the crazy thing was, is there was a little bit of an argument for my husband. Like he's very good about going along with what I do. We've been together a really long time. He knows that I don't mess around when it comes to things. But the thing was, is he was like, how are we going to afford this? Like this kind of food is so much more expensive. And I was like, well, how are we affording all of the other medical costs that are coming along with
Mm.
this? And that's something that a lot of people don't think of. They're like perfectly fine paying $100 or $200 a month for a prescription. But when it comes to buying a quality grass fed steak, they're like, I can't afford this.
Great point. That is such a great point. I love that. Or they're not counting all the snacking in between the meals that they're doing because they're hungry all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And
Wow.
it was crazy. I mean, within a couple weeks, my husband was like, dang, my back doesn't hurt. And like, my kids were way better. People were noticing that my son was having no problems. And it was like, okay. And then the biggest thing for me was me too. Like I had been tested for all these things. Like I had something weird going on pretty much my whole life. And I'd been tested for all these things, and everybody was like, "Oh, you're just fine. Like Western medicine, normal, within normal limits, or whatever." At one point, they thought I had lupus, and they
Wow.
tested for that, and I didn't pass. Like I was fine there. And anyway, like in the long and the short of things, like within a couple weeks, all of the brain fog started going away, all the fatigue, the joint pain, like all these things. And we started all feeling like $1,000,000. And after 16 months of this protocol, we were all in really good shape.
Wow. That's so interesting. Was exercise any part of the protocol as you got started?
Nope.
Just
No,
nutrition.
none.
Wow.
Yeah,
Got
just
it.
nutrition.
So,
And that's where like, yeah, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
And that's where like all of a sudden things started really changing, right? Because everyone's asking us what we're doing. Like, are you working out? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? And we're like, no, we're just eating right. And we got made fun of so bad by everybody around us. Like, I feel like it's kind of this thing where people, if they don't have the balls to, excuse my language, but if they don't have the balls to do something, they just want to make fun of you to do it because nobody
100%.
wants to see. Some people don't want to see other people succeed. And so, they're like, oh, like even my kids, the rudeness that was crazy. Like, oh, let's give you a donut and restore your childhood. And the crazy thing is at this point, my son was probably like 6 and or 7. And he went over to my sister-in-law's, and he was like, they were eating brownies around the campfire and s'mores and stuff. And he was staying with them. And she called me and she's like, you'll never guess what just happened. She's like, your son, we offered him a brownie and a s'more, and he said, no, I don't want to eat that stuff because I don't like how I feel when I eat it.
That's amazing.
And when a young kid can say that, you know that there was definitely something going on.
Wow, that's so crazy. And yeah, we notice the same things. Like it's so easy to sit around and make fun of people who are doing the work to be healthy. Like, yeah, it's super frustrating. So you did that for 16 months. Why did you, I'm assuming you didn't continue doing that?
No, we did. We just basically lightened it up into more of like a paleo style diet where we would eat things that like we would bring in honey, for example, or eat like a Lara bar. So it's packaged. Technically, it wouldn't be like GAPS approved, but it's more like, what the ingredients are, basically whole foods type diet. So,
Gotcha.
um, and that seemed to be totally fine. Like no problems there by reintroducing things. Everything we ate, we knew what it was. We didn't eat sugar, processed sugar. So we would have like the kids would have like honey. I'd make like little treats here and there. And we didn't do any kind of grains. So no oats or wheat or rice or anything like that. We didn't do any kind of grains. And just kept it very paleo like.
Gotcha. When did fitness become a component of your health?
Well, so I started losing a lot of weight and we've always been really active, right? We own a farm. At one point, I've been racing motocross and dirt bikes since I was like 2 years old. And my husband and I, that's actually how we met, and we would race every single weekend. So I was in good shape as far as not like I didn't go to the gym, but I was always really active. But I started losing all this weight, and I remember looking in the mirror, and it was like I was so skinny. I had no muscle tone at all. And I remember like at that point I was reading a lot of books. I try to stay really broad in my range of things that I read and take on in my mind, and I was listening to a lot of like reading a lot of Jocko Willink books and David
Mm,
Goggins and all those guys, lots of Navy SEAL books. And I was like, well, the only person that's and that's my mindset, right? I'm kind of crazy like that. I'm very like driven. And I was like, well, if the only person that's going to change the way I look and make myself look the way I think I should look is me. And I got to stop making excuses because that was the biggest thing. I was like, I'm a mom. I don't have time to go to the gym. I don't have time to work out. And I kept telling myself that over and over again. And finally, it was like, I have time for this. I need to make time. I can't be like, oh, I just can't fit that in today. I need to actually put it on a schedule and hold myself accountable. And that's basically what I started doing. And my fitness routine wasn't anything crazy. Like anybody could do it. And that's the thing that I try to get out there is that I did that for like ever. I did it for like a year. I would go in my bedroom, like my alarm would go off at 4 o'clock in the morning. I would get up. It started with just body weight exercises. So like push-ups, sit-ups, body weight squats, stuff like that. And then it got to where I wanted to incorporate something. So I bought a 20-pound kettlebell because I was like, 20-pound kettlebell, I can use that for a lot of stuff.
yeah.
And I just started like YouTubing, Googling, looking all over Instagram at things I could do with that kettlebell. And then pretty soon I was like, man, I'm getting jacked. I'm sure that I drove my husband nuts because I was like, oh my gosh, feel my muscle in my leg. Like, and he would roll his eyes like, oh my gosh, like, what is this? But anyway, like, I kept building on it. And then pretty soon I was splitting things into days where it was like, I'm doing my upper body this day, lower body this day, next day is upper body, and so on and so forth. And I ended up cleaning out my office at my house. And that's when I bought this crappy old bench press and I started buying all of these rusty old weights and stuff from people. And then next thing you know, I've got a bench and a bunch of rusty old weights. And I basically worked out for like a year that way until I started getting to the point of where I was like looking really amazing. Like I would look in the mirror and it blew my mind. I was just like, holy crap, is that
Wow.
me? And at that point I was like, my husband and I are laying in bed, and this is how most women do it, right? They tap you on the shoulder and they're like, "Hey, honey, I've been thinking I want to do this," or "Hey, how about we remodel the house this day?" That's when we always slide it in on you guys, is when you're getting ready to fall asleep. Uh, but
Smart.
but
Smart.
yeah, but I was like, "Hey, I've never really told you, but I've always really been into bodybuilding." On a different level, like a secret level, which was the truth. And I was like, I think I really want to step on stage. And he was like, oh, okay, like, well, figure out what that's going to take. Well, the coaching and all that was like extremely expensive. So I looked into it. I hired myself a coach, personal trainer, and within 6 weeks, I stepped on stage, basically,
Wow.
is what it looked like. Yeah.
Wow. That's great. That's
Um,
super fast.
Yeah, and I mean, I had already put in the legwork and I was already getting like I was lean to start with because of my nutrition habits and like basically my coaching experience was a little weird because of finances and the people I hired. I didn't know what to look for in a coach at the time, so
Sure.
it was a little bit of a messy coaching experience. But either way, I made my goal. I stepped on stage. I did really, really well. And then that started a major addiction with bodybuilding, basically.
Gotcha. Interesting. Okay, so I want to go back because you said something that's so important that oftentimes people make mistakes or they think it's going to be harder than they think. So up until the time that you told your husband you wanted to step on stage, you'd gotten really fit, you'd gotten strong. It didn't sound like you used a ton of equipment. A lot of the stuff you said was body weight. But what was, as you're looking back, what was the hardest part of your journey into better fitness?
I think just like when you work a full-time job and you're a busy mom and you're busy and you're in the rat race like everybody else in this country, there's not a one person that I can think of that, I mean, there are people out there that are lazy, but maybe they're busy in another way, like we all are busy. So making the time was the hardest part, honestly.
Gotcha.
And even I can't tell you how many mornings my alarm would go off. People think because I'm into fitness, my alarm goes off and I'm like, yeah. And I flip the covers off and I jump in and I'm like, let's do it. This is no Richard Simmons stuff. Okay. The alarm goes off and I'm like, not that thing again. But I made that vow to myself to get up and to do it. And that's one thing I find that we do as a population that is ridiculous and sets us so far back is we start to compromise on ourselves, right? We're like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, or I'll do it later, or I'll have the cupcake today. Every once in a while is not going to hurt. And we start to compromise ourselves out of achieving our goals because once you compromise one time, it makes it so much easier to continue to do that. And it's the same with drug use or alcohol or anything like that. And I hate to compare it to that, but it's the truth. Like everybody, maybe like people that become drug addicts, they might try something one time and they're like, I'm just going to do it this one time and see what it's like. But what does that lead into? It's the same thing with not following through on fitness or nutrition or sleep or whatever your goals are.
Thank you so much. That was so very well explained. And that's such a great point. It sounds like you made the decision one time. And if you make that decision one time, you don't have to make that decision every morning when your alarm goes off. You had already made the decision and committed to yourself. So it's already done. It's just then being true to yourself and staying consistent. I love that. That was super well explained. And I wish more people would make that decision. Just do something every single day and be consistent with it. Don't have to make that decision every day. Just commit to yourself, make the decision and do it. It's so great. So tell us a little bit about what happened after your first bodybuilding contest, how that evolved.
Okay, well, so at that point, I had a coach. I had already been really deep into a nutrition yet rabbit hole for a couple of years, right? So I was really new and understood nutrition really well. I had no certifications or anything like that. What I did have was street knowledge that I was like mega tuned into. So she was trying to tell me some things I didn't really believe in or go for. But anyway, long story short, she was like, you should become a personal trainer. And I was like, well, she's like, you're so amazing with form and you're meticulous with it. And you're a great people person. Everyone I know loves you. You should become a personal trainer. I was like, oh no, I'm not into that. I don't want to train other people. I just want to train myself. Like, that's all I want to do. And at this point I'm working out at the gym, right? Because it just was way easier that way. And I really liked to get out of my house and do something for me outside of the home. So my fitness kind of evolved into going to the gym. And she encouraged me to do that. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. So I became a personal trainer. And I didn't think that was going to be my thing. I really wanted to work more on the nutritionist side of things. But I started training people and I was like, wow, this is fun. I found myself getting into like more corrective type exercises. And when somebody comes in and they're like, my knee hurts, I'm like, oh, well, do this, do that. Okay, let's work on knee stability. Let's work on what actually causes knee pain and like start strengthening the glutes and work on ankle mobility and hip mobility and all these things. Like I started getting crazy with it. So anyway, and it was an accident that I became a personal trainer. I really love it. And and so that was an entire another accident. Now, more intentionally, I became a certified nutritionist, and that was because it all goes together. You can't work out and be in the greatest health of your life by not incorporating nutrition. And I had seen how much of an impact it had made in my own life. I had also learned how much of a role nutrition plays in our overall health everywhere. It affects every process. Like you're not going to go like if your gut health, which is the main problem with a lot of people's stuff, right? Your gut health affects everything. I mean, most autoimmune diseases out there are tied to how people's gut health are or lack thereof. So I started getting really huge into gut health, and basically that was kind of how I started to evolve, right? But then I thought, okay, well, if I'm a personal trainer and I loved the stage, the bodybuilding stage, big time, I thought that I needed to get a pro card as a bodybuilder in order for people to find value in my services.
Yeah.
So which I was 100% wrong there, and we can go there in a minute. But and I had a new coach at that point because I moved on from my one that I started with, and I've always gotten really great feedback on my stage presence and all these things. And she was an IFBB pro bodybuilder, and she was like, "Listen, you could be a pro within a year." She's like, "If you push." And I think you can do it. And I started to push. And at my first competition and first prep with her, I was working really hard. I looked incredible on stage, grabbed a second place, and then it was all downhill from there because I grabbed that second place and I was really had that pro card on my mind, and I started pushing to go to the next competition way too hard. So, and then of course she was willing to push me, and I was in huge caloric deficits, like eating hardly anything, trying to lose weight. I couldn't lose weight to save my life. I was trying to lose weight, which seems crazy, right? You do 3 hours of cardio a day, you eat 1,000 calories,
Wow.
and you're lifting heavy weights. You would think you'd be able to get to that physique that you're looking for, and it wasn't happening for me. So what happened was the cardio continued to go up, the calories continued to go down. And contrary to what people think about calories in, calories out, at one point your body goes into a distress mode. Your hormonal regulation is completely changed. Your metabolic capacity changes. Everything changes. Your body's not going to lose for you. And so I pushed it really, really hard into my next competition. Ended up not doing. I mean, I still placed. I've always placed, but it was not as well as I was hoping for. I had pictured 100 million times over that I'd be in the center of the stage getting first place, and that didn't happen. And at that time, I mean, I don't know how many people or how many of your listeners have ever been stage lean before, but there were a couple things fueling it. For sure, the fact that I was extremely low on body fat. You've got to figure the way these competitions played out is one was 6 weeks after the other. And so I was already in single digit body fat the first competition when I got second place. And then I spent 6 weeks of crazy cardio and eating hardly anything, pushing my body to the edge to try to get leaner than a single digit number.
How did your husband not divorce you?
He was getting super stressed out because here's the other thing, right? Your body starts doing all sorts of crazy things. Like it's like I couldn't feel my face. I was so exhausted. Like I literally could, there's stairs to get up to the Stairmaster at the gym that I used to go to. And I almost couldn't walk up those stairs. My body felt so heavy, yet then I would climb on the Stairmaster and do 200 to 300 flights of stairs. And that's just the fact that unfortunately I have this thing that could be a quality and a curse. And it's that I can shut off pain and I can achieve whatever the heck I want to. Right. Yep. But at what consequence? So, anyway, at that point, he was actually starting to get really worried because, we live on a farm. I take care of all these critters and stuff, and I never let anybody else do it for me because they are all my little babies, and I'm very meticulous about it. And at that point, when I asked him to start taking care, I'm like, "Hey, can you go feed the horses? I'm too tired to walk out there." He was like, "Okay, are you going to die in your sleep? What's going on?"
Wow. That's so crazy.
And your brain doesn't function either, right? So I couldn't make a good decision if I wanted to. I mean, there was this part of me that was like, okay, this is totally wrong. And I would ask my coach a question and she would be like, no, no, after the show, we're going to reverse diet you. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. You'll be just fine. And it was like a car salesman telling you this thing. And I was like, oh, at one point I was like, I probably should switch coaches, but then, my brain didn't work. So I knew it was wrong. I did it anyway. I was taking like fat burners and ephedrine and like all these things, trying to get the weight to come off. Well, 2 weeks after the show, I started gaining more weight. Another month after the show, I still didn't feel good, which was really weird. Went to a functional medicine doctor. And at that point, she diagnosed me with Hashimoto's, which is a condition of the thyroid, basically an autoimmune disease. And so there were a couple factors involved with all of that. And first of all, the factor was that I had Hashimoto's. I had probably had it as long as I can remember. My husband and I have had this conversation a bunch of times. The thing is I went on that GAPS diet. It cleared me up of my autoimmune disease because I got my health correct.
Yep.
And that's why I lost a lot of weight and had so many improvements. But then it came back because not only is autoimmune disease triggered by, gut health and things like that, when you start placing a lot of stress on your body, that affects your gut health as well. That affects the rest of your immune system. And I was overstressing my body, and my Hashimoto's came back with a vengeance.
Wow.
So
That's
part of the
crazy.
reason, yeah, I couldn't lose weight. Part of the reason while I was trying to get to lower levels of body fat, I couldn't because my body was retaliating. And it was like this vicious circle because it was like, okay, well, we'll throw more fat burners at it, more cardio, less calories. Well, we were actually stressing my system out more. So my thyroid was quitting working even more. My body was attacking itself even more. It was actually leading to a huge disaster.
Wow, that's crazy. Okay, so you mentioned something earlier. Let's go rabbit hole here. I've
Sure, love
explained
it.
this. I've explained this a little bit in the past, and I've heard you explain it. You do a great job explaining how this works. So, for over a decade, I used a metabolic cart to measure people's metabolic rates, and I have measured plenty of fitness competitors in different stages. And can you explain metabolically what is going on when you are on a treadmill for 3 hours and you're eating 1,000 calories or less? What is going on with your body metabolically?
Oh man, so there are a ton of adaptations that actually happen, which is very hard to explain all of them and have it make perfect sense. But the biggest player in this one is your adrenal and your thyroid health. So your body basically essentially is like a thermostat, right? So you change the temperature in the room and it's going to kick on a heater to heat it back up, or it could be the other way around if you're looking to keep it cool. But anyway, basically with the thyroid, which is what is the thermostat for your whole body, right? So many chronic dieting cases and chronic cardio cases, the thyroid actually down regulates and starts taking that T3 hormone that it uses to produce energy and run all of these other processes and regulate all these other hormones, and turns it into something called reverse T3. And when this happens, you actually start to hang on to it just totally down regulates your whole system. You're hanging on to fat. The other thing that I was talking about was your adrenal system. So when you start to stress out the hypothalamus, you are also asking for big trouble. So, I ended up with my bodybuilding preps, I ended up with some mega problems because I actually had what they call is HPA axis dysfunction, which is an adrenal condition because your adrenals just basically have to put out so much that they get tired. So when people are doing chronic cardio, to kind of zero in on your question a little bit more, they're actually just it depends on the zones that they're in. So that's a little bit more of a rabbit hole we could go down, but most people are getting on there and they're doing extreme like running and things like that. And when they do that, they are actually pushing their body's metabolism to create more energy and stuff. So they're not necessarily what's a good way to put it here? You could tell me a better way to put this probably, but when you're lifting weights and you're gaining muscle, a lot of muscle is metabolically expensive. And so there is a huge benefit to that. But when you start doing hours and hours of cardio, you're not actually getting muscle, you're just burning off energy. So your body is looking to fill that void. It's just like that thermostat. Does that make sense?
Perfect sense. That's so very well explained. I'm so glad you used thermostat. And I want the listener to know that that's very literal. Like, if I can't use a metabolic cart to measure you, my second best proxy is taking your temperature and seeing what your temperature is, because guaranteed, if you are doing tons of cardio and limiting your calories, you are going to be cold, very, very, very cold. And you can see it on a cheap, inexpensive thermostat. And I'm so glad you brought up the difference between the cardio and the strength training. It's like the one side of the gym, people are huffing and puffing and they're a hot, sweaty mess, and they leave the gym and come back tomorrow and they look the same. Where the other side, people are not as big of a mess. They're there for maybe 20 or 30 minutes and they are changing. Their bodies look very different. Saw it all the time.
But the thermostat, you were talking about the heat. Like, the first thing that happens when your thyroid starts to go bad is your temperature changing. And so a lot of great functional medicine doctors actually use you taking your temperature as a gauge to see if you have adrenal problems.
I love that. That is super smart. I love that. Awesome. Well, thank you for explaining that down that rabbit hole. That's exactly where I wanted to go, and you explained it super well. Let's get back to you. So you learn about all these health conditions. What changes then? Like, how do you progress from there?
Well, so then that's been the trick, right? It's been about 2 years trying to figure all of that stuff out. Honestly, it's been 2 years of working hard on my gut health, working to get my metabolism regulated again. So, and that looked really bad at first. And I had to be patient with myself. And I literally had to talk to myself, have little pep talks with myself, being like, listen, we are changing things. You have to be patient. You just put your body through hell. You now have a diagnosis. I had to be put on thyroid medication because my thyroid was in really bad shape. And just to put into picture how bad I killed my thyroid off, thyroid antibodies should be between like 0 and 35, no more than 35. My thyroid antibodies were up over 1100.
Wow.
So yeah. So I was a mess and my adrenals were tanked and all these things. So that looked like me having to eat, like, even when I was eating, because my metabolism had down regulated so much, even eating 1500 calories a day, my body gained like 55 pounds in 2 months. It was crazy. And at that point I was like, well, I've got to get my calories up there. I've got to get to this homeostatic place. I need to be consistent about it so that my body doesn't think that it's starving all the time. And that ended up looking like forcing myself, even though it's hard as a woman. And here I am, this nutritionist and personal trainer, and I'm pretty round at this point. Being able to accept that, I don't have to look shredded. Whereas all these people are like, what happened to you? Do you even work out anymore? Being able to accept that and turning around and doing what was right for my health, which was making sure that I ate at least 2000 calories a day. And I completely stopped doing cardio.
Wow. I have gone through that process myself. It was a phase of time in my life where there was a lot of stress. I was riding my bike quite a bit at the time. That was kind of the stress relief, but also probably causing even more that I was not aware of. And my weight and body fat percentage just went straight down. It was really weird. Like, I was single digits and, feeling okay. But then I started to feel my energy go down. And I started realizing, like, holy cow, like my metabolism is dropping. And so I need to do a protocol to get this back up. And that protocol is extremely uncomfortable. I mean, eat everything. Eat cheeseburgers, eat milkshakes, eat anything that's super calorie dense. And I just watched my weight go up and up and up and up. Like, I probably gained 20 or 25 pounds. And you're right. That is not very comfortable if you're in the fitness world and you're, trying to recover your metabolism. It's very hard psychologically. It's not easy.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you made a good point there, like stress and cardio. And that's another huge part of the metabolism, right? Like, your body, when it's stressed, completely changes its metabolic outlook. And so that's also another huge contributor when it comes to weight gain and people that struggle with fat loss. I definitely recommend, if anybody has the time or they're avid readers, definitely get the book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. It will definitely blow your mind when it comes to how much leverage stress has in your overall health.
Yeah, that's a great book. That's a really good book. Great recommendation. I want to ask you what your opinion is. I think of anybody we could ask this question, you would probably know the most about it. When some people will look at bodybuilding and say like, wow, these are the healthiest people. This is what fitness looks like. This is health. And other people would say, this is absolutely not fitness or health. This is, getting people to their very leanest and tannest and expecting them to go on stage and be compared with other people, and psychologically the damages that can do. What do you think about health and fitness and the bodybuilding industry?
Oh gosh, this is a good one. Yeah. So most bodybuilders I know of are damaged goods. Like everybody's like, oh, I want to look like that, and fitness models and beach body coaches and these people like. Have you ever looked at a beach body video? I know that I was listening to a podcast. Can't remember her name now. I really wish that I could go back in time and remember which one it was, but she was one of the main beach body like people that did the videos and stuff. And she basically went through a bodybuilding cut in order to get shredded for this video. And she showed up for the video shoot and they were like, we want you to lose 5 more pounds. And she was like, at that time, I had been doing like 3 hours of cardio. I wasn't eating anything. I felt absolutely horrible. And what did I do? I went and lost 5 more pounds before we filmed. And she said, and the worst part about that is we have people dancing around in front of a screen to us doing these exercise videos, making them think that if they do this video every day, that they can look like this. When you are like, she's like, I was the sickest I've ever been. It was a borderline eating disorder, basically.
Crazy. Wow.
And so that's what people need to understand is this fitness industry is a bunch of smoke and mirrors. And so if anybody tells, I mean, some people, and I will put this out there, are genetically gifted. Some people just their metabolism, their body composition. There's a lot of factors, genetics. Some people just are blessed and they can look pretty decent most of the time, work out, and that just exponentially helps. But for the average human being, you're not going to be healthy and walk around shredded all the time, especially not a female. Males are a little bit different. Their metabolisms and hormonal regulations are different. But especially not for females. Females are meant to have some body fat on them. So, most people in the fitness industry, and the crazy thing is I've gotten into a bunch of like coaching study clubs, and I've gotten into some really great female circles. Ever since I got into bodybuilding, I have seen more eating disorders and body dysmorphia and gut dysbiosis and so many problems of these people that were former competitors or still compete. And then these people that they use also competing as a way to keep themselves lean all the time, but they are crushing their longevity. Like these people end up being extremely sick. I mean, I have a close friend that was top in the bodybuilding field. And basically his health is forever ruined because of bodybuilding. Wow. And as now he's in his 50s and he's like, listen, people don't know what they have until it's gone. Like he's missing a kidney. He has a whole bunch of major problems. And it's like, at the time it seemed like a good idea.
Yeah. Right. Wow. I mean, So we would just try to, like, if somebody asked us about it, we'd be like, just be aware that these things might happen and then make a really good decision. And I think another thing is like, let me just wave a magic wand. Let me say you are your leanest, like tannest, fittest self you've ever been. What changes in your life? Like, is your life any better or different? Or is it, again, like kind of smoke and mirrors? Like, did you just chase something that you had expectations that your life was going to be magically better and it wasn't? Like, you have to be aware of those things. So I think it's like, if you want to do it, I understand like you wanting to do it, like it's your passion. It's great. And just find a great coach like yourself that you can work with that can like really help you understand the challenges that will come.
Absolutely. There's a lot of things to this. And so it makes it very multifaceted. But the thing about it is like when I was competing, I remember taking photos of myself to send to my coach and being like, oh my gosh, I look disgusting. Like, look at this, look at that. And I remember just critiquing the heck out of myself and thinking, oh, well, when I get to this size, I'll be happy. And oh, when I get to that size, and when I look this way, I'll be happy. And I always had the promise of being happy on the other side of it. And then after that, it was like, I look back at the pictures and I'm like, what in the hell was I thinking? And then the really big kicker was I pulled out a pair of shorts that I used to wear when I was competing, and they were like a 00, and they looked like my 7-year-old daughter could wear them.
Wow. Wow.
And I looked at those and it blew my mind. I actually did an Instagram post about it because I was like, when I was wearing these, I did nothing but say, oh, if I could lose a little bit more weight, if I could get a little skinnier, or if I didn't have cellulite, or I still wouldn't even wear shorts around other people. I was so embarrassed. Right.
Wow.
And it was like, I was a 00 and I was in shredded to the bone. And here I hated the way I looked. And when I started this journey, for people that don't know, I was nearly 200 pounds. And when I started, here I am 114 pounds. And I thought, oh, if I get like this, if I lost 20 pounds, I'd be happy. Well, I lost far more than 20 pounds and I hated myself. And I look back at the pictures now, even pictures from when I was like 16 weeks out. And I was like, dang, I looked really, really good right there. Wow. I can't believe I wasn't happy with myself. And so now I see it, but it was like, oh my, I did nothing but sit and critique it, which was ridiculous. Right.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. That can be really hard to realize and even harder to be vulnerable with and share. So I'm really glad you told that story. Again, it's just something to be aware of. If you choose to do a sport, just know that there's things that you might run into. And if happiness is your goal, you can decide to be happy right now with anything, anywhere, any situation. That's a decision that you make. And if you don't make that decision, it doesn't matter what you get. You'll get to the goal and it will be the most empty feeling ever because you were chasing a ghost. It's so crazy. Thank you again so much for explaining that. So what other things have you been up to kind of like restore your health?
Well, definitely working on my gut microbiome has been an interesting one, which has included reducing stress in my life, which is a really hard thing. Before I actually pulled the trigger and became a full-time coach, I was actually still working 12-hour shifts in dentistry. I had a family to take care of. I was going to school full-time and still trying to educate myself in every other way, be it thousands of books and things like that. I was the epitome of stress, rushing around, never getting lunch breaks at work. And I realized how much that was impacting my health in every other way. So finally, one day I told my husband, I was like, listen, I'm not going to go back to my day job. I'm done. I need to fix this. So a lot of it has looked like stress control. The other thing is taking nutrition from a different approach. And this is where things get a little interesting because I've always been a fan of eating whole food, but I needed to do something I had not done before. And I was getting really desperate. My weight would not stabilize. And the calories, like I had the calories up, but my body was just soaking up every little bit of it. And so I was like, I got to try something. And I was a little bit scared because in the bodybuilding field, removing carbs is like crazy taboo, right? But I tried everything else and I needed to do something. And I had major food sensitivities because my gut health was so bad from all the stress that I put on myself. Think of it this way. I put all that stress on myself, bodybuilding, cutting and stuff like that. But also I had started eating like sucralose and things like that because I was so desperate for things that had taste. So I totally destroyed my gut microbiome with sucralose, for sure sucralose. And I definitely also destroyed it. Think of all the fat burners and all these things that I was putting into it that just totally ate it. So I was desperate and I was like, what am I going to do? And this was like probably 18 months ago. I was like, and I listened to a podcast with Dr. Ken Berry and I was like, he's like, I urge everybody to try carnivore for just 30 days. He's like, it's 30 days. What's it going to do to you? Nothing, And I was like, okay. I'm going to try it. So in true Connie fashion, I came home. I told my husband, I said, I'm going to go carnivore for 30 days. He was like, what? What do you got? I'm like, seriously, lady? And anyway, he's like, well, Joe Rogan does it and he loves it. And, I was like, okay. So I ended up going carnivore for 30 days. And then that turned into 8 weeks because I felt so great. My stomach finally, after months and months and months, started to come around. I wasn't bloated all the time because I literally was like, I always have a six pack. I know that sounds crazy, but even when I'm overweight, it's just not a place that I've ever put on weight before. But I would have like a six pack and it looked like it was a pregnant six pack. It was so bloated. I just couldn't get rid of it. And I had tried everything. I had implemented hydrochloric acid and ox bile. I don't have my gallbladder, so I don't have enough bile salts to actually break down fats and stuff like that. I had tried everything and I was so bloated. And I remember after about a week of being on carnivore, my stomach, I was laying in bed and my stomach wasn't bloated anymore.
Wow.
I was like totally flat. And I was like, wow, what's going on? And my husband's like, Connie, in like a week, you look so much better. And so that morphed into like 8 weeks of carnivore. And it was great. And then I started pulling some things back in because I didn't want to stay carnivore forever. And my body immediately started having issues again. So I was like, okay. So then I was like, okay, I'm going to just try going keto. And I was scared and all my bodybuilding friends thought I was nuts, but I was like, listen, my blood sugar sucks, which, who knows why. I still have a little bit of an issue, but I actually was reading a thing about, I was a premature baby. And I was actually just recently reading a thing that says premature babies actually like 8 out of 10 of them have blood sugar control issues.
Really? Wow. Interesting.
Yeah. My mind was blown when I read that, but I was like, well, crap, maybe that's it. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But
because they're
maybe
small, they're smaller and they're needing to hold on to more nutrients or something. That's where my mind would go.
They have metabolic syndrome. They said 8 out of 10 premature babies have metabolic syndrome, which I don't know if that's the case with me, but I do struggle with my blood sugar. And so at that point I knew blood glucose was king. I was wearing a continuous glucose monitor. I was like, okay, well, I got to get my blood sugar under control, which may not look like just eating protein and fat first and then eating carbs. Maybe that looks like just not eating carbs and resetting everything. And I started really getting into reading and researching and talking to people that had tried a ketogenic diet. And I was like, okay, I'm all in. I'm doing it. And so basically I spent a whole year in ketosis, which was amazing because I started getting into endurance cycling. And at that point, I started discovering all these amazing things that happen when you're fat adapted.
It's the best. It's the best. I'm faster on my bike now than I've ever been.
Oh, it's crazy. Like I was just talking with a coach the other day and like they're not really for the ketogenic diet. There's all sorts of camps out there, which is cool. I mean, everybody has to find what works for them. And it happened to work for me, but I was talking to him and he said he just actually read a book about people that are doing endurance athletes or athletics without carbs. And I was like, I'm telling you, it works great for me. It blows my mind how great it is. So yeah, basically I spent over a full year on ketogenic diet. And then recently I started pulling some carbs back in and here and there. And my insulin sensitivity has been pretty great. So, I'm more of a paleo type, person at this point again. But I do go through cycles. So like, depending on where my training's at, I might have carbs or I might not. I might want to, like I can guarantee you before this I have a couple upcoming races. I'll probably go without carbs for a couple weeks prior and then load the day before.
Nice.
That works really well for me.
Great.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, anyway, ketogenic diet really, I think, was what got me out of the hole for sure.
Gotcha. Wow. What a cool journey. It's so funny that people in the bodybuilding industry would like poo-poo some of the low carb diets or like carnivore diets. Like when in my opinion, when people look the best were kind of when your heroes were bodybuilding. I thought the generations of Arnold and all those guys, I thought they had the best physique. They might not have been as big as bodybuilders are now, but they had the best physique. Guess what all of them did 6 weeks out of a contest? They ate steak and eggs.
And broccoli.
Yes. Yeah. That's what they do. It makes perfect sense.
Well, and that's kind of how it was back then, right? But people, I mean, there's a lot of crazy things going on in the bodybuilding world. Like, and there's a lot of bro science and there's a lot of stuff that's not backed up. And, and then pretty much if you really want to, you can find science to back up anything you want to do.
Yeah, good
So
point.
in the end, you have to do what works right for you. And that's going to be the most important part of your journey, is not necessarily poo-pooing anything. Now, if somebody told me, hey, Connie, go on the potato chip diet and see how you feel, I would probably politely decline, because I know what polyunsaturated fats and no protein does to somebody. So there is that. Although I did have somebody tell me the other day they were going on a high carb diet because that was going to help them lose weight, because the protein was yeah, I was like, what is this? This is crazy. But
Yeah.
there's something for everybody out there, and something that may have worked for everybody, whether it was a crazy phenomenon or whatever. But that's why you have to be open-minded to trying new things.
I love that. That's great advice. Tell us a little bit about your business and what working with you looks like if somebody wanted to work with you.
Yeah, so it's highly variable, really. I have a lot of programs on my website at ConnieNightingale.com that are pre-made. They're great because people can still chat with me if they need help with things. We have biweekly check-ins. They're about $10 a week, and that gives them an app and everything that they can do their stuff on, which is a awesome deal. Because I just love helping other people, and that's the thing, is like, if I was in this to make my next million, I would be screwed. But I do
Wrong
it
industry.
because,
Wrong
yeah,
industry.
I want to help other people like experience the journey that I did, that like, cause I learned so much from becoming healthy and unhealthy in multiple times. But, I've learned so much, and that's one thing. The fitness industry is like this financially driven industry where they want to charge people all this crazy money for these supplements and all this stuff. And it gets overwhelming. And then people are like, well, screw that. I can't get healthy. Well, you can. And I try to make that affordable. I do custom coaching as well. I coach bodybuilding athletes. I keep them healthy coming into their preps, or as healthy as they can be. Very mindful of blood work, all of that kind of stuff. And then I just do lifestyle clients too. People that have been struggling with an autoimmune disease or diabetes or all of these things, help them attack it from a different standpoint, because a lot of people don't look outside the box when it comes to these and things, and they've been told all sorts of garbage that kind of like eat carbs if you have diabetes, that kind of garbage. So I try to get to I try to get to the bottom of things and actually find the root causes, rather than just being like, oh, you got to eat less, because that's not the case for some people. Like, and then here's the other portion of it, is for all these people that are desperate to lose weight. And I have a client learning all of this right now who is amazing. She's like, wow, I can't thank you enough for how much you've taught me about my body. But she is learning that once the health comes, the weight loss comes. And so, not focusing on losing weight, but focusing on regaining your health is a huge component when it comes to weight loss. And so that's something that I'm a huge advocate for.
Wow. I love that. We are so glad to have you on the show to talk about your journey, to be vulnerable with us, to talk about the things you've learned along the way that maybe changed your mind about a few things. I think it's so easy to wrap your identity up in one thing, and that's the thing. And you never learn, you never grow, you never change your mind about stuff. So I love how you're approaching things. I hope a lot of people find your work and work with you, because it's really great. And that sounds like an amazing experience to be working with you. That's fantastic. What is one simple thing you would want a listener to take away from this conversation? I think I know what you're going to say, but I would love to hear it in your voice.
Um, well, like I just said, definitely finding health and making weight loss less of a concern, but also focusing on eating real food is a huge thing. I can't reiterate enough how important taking care of your digestion and your gut health, which is directly impacted by the things that you put in it, affects the rest of your body systemically. So the way you look, your acne, your overall health, your blood work, all of that stuff is all impacted by what goes in. So paying very close attention to the quality of the food that you're eating is extremely important.
We love that. Could not be more on board. Where can people go to find you and your work?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, ConnieNightingale.com, Nightingale spelt like the bird. I'm on Instagram under Conniebegonnie. You can friend me there, shoot me a DM if you ever have questions. And then also my podcast, The Fit Farming Food Mom, is a great podcast. I try to bring a wide variety of people on to talk about all things health, fitness in there, stress relief, you name it. I think I've covered a lot of it on there. And then every once in a while, if you guys pop onto my Instagram and you're interested, I do speak on a weight loss panel, and it's on Clubhouse, and it's called Functional Fat Loss.
That's awesome. Well, that's so great. Connie Nightingale, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for your content. To the listener, she's right. Her podcast covers a wide range of topics. It's very well done. Go check it out. The Fit Farming Food Mom podcast. Hard to say, but easy to listen to. Please leave her a rating and review. Subscribe to her show. Go look her up. Connie, we're just so excited for you and so grateful for you and your time. And thank you for sharing your journey with us today. There's a lot to unpack here, and I think it'll help a lot of people.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate you guys having me on the show.
Absolutely. It's an honor. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.